the media today are more and more content providers. We're providing content just by this very interview, and you need a lot of it. And to get people to read what you have to say, or hear what you have to say, or to see what you think, as you express yourself in broadcast, in the broadcast medium, you have to tend to, create crises or scandals or gotcha moments. And I think it's I frankly think it's an unfortunate development in the media today that, I was reflecting on a news story I was reading during the course of today, and it was, it wasn't X expresses opinion about Y, it was X expresses outrage about Y. So you have this desire to turn things into scandals and crises and to elevate interest, to cut through, to grab attention when you're a producer of media content. And, in many ways, I see the coverage of that particular issue in that light. I'm not going to talk about the merits of it or anything like that, but, so often now we have these crises of these issues, and it's not to devalue them in any way, but you tend to get a period when there's sort of like a mob mentality around the media focusing on something. So 1 minute it might be what Dominic Cummings has done, the next, understandably, something like Black Lives Matters. Then it's, before we had, we had the Arab Spring. We've had, from when apparently the whole Middle East was going to change, and for months the media were focusing on what's going on in the Middle East, and this was an uprising of democracy, and things have gone pretty much back to the way they were. So I think, and the Me Too movement and all of these things, I just think there's a tendency to grab issues and elevate the intensity of debate around them in a way that actually alienates many, many voters. And so, I don't, as I said, I'm not going to comment on the particular issue. I just think in terms of whether anyone behaved rightly or wrongly or anything else, but or what the impact might be. But I just think that we've got to be careful not to believe that just because the media get excited about something for a sustained period, that actually that issue is of itself necessarily relevant to the public. It's just something that, I'm not saying it wasn't, but I'm quite skeptical about the way everybody jumps onto an issue and it blows up for a period, and then it almost goes as quickly as it came.
That's very interesting, Linton. Do you think that the crisis has been and will remain big news across the world, sort of very news heavy, lots of people locked down, probably consuming more news than ever before because of the uncertainty. Do you think that the relationship between sort of the public and the media is changing as well? Do you think people's sort of perception, broadly speaking, of the media is changing? Is that going to will this crisis have an impact?
It's really interesting. So early on in our tracking polling, and so me who was speaking about polls before, but in terms of trying to understand things rather than just say what they say, what has been interesting is people, the two groups, the two sort of, well, the people turned to the government for information, and interestingly to television for information. So television consumption was up. Then what we saw was some, and trust in government was up because people were looking for a solid, reliable source. And this wasn't, a partisan debate. This is a big problem facing my country, facing me, facing the world. How should I think about it? What's going on? Is someone managing this? Is there a plan? And so people were very desperate for news and for information. They weren't looking for commentary. They were wanting to apply their own filter, their own prism over the issue, but they did return to television and to a lesser extent, but also increased use of digital media. But at the same time, we started to see a deterioration in trust in the media. And that was because there was this feeling that actually, I want to hear what's going on, but I don't need a journalist to interpret it for me. I don't need a commentator to express their opinion. I just want to hear the facts, and I want to evaluate those facts or what I'm being told, and I'll make the judgment about it. So there was an increase in interest in hearing from government and an increase in trust. There was an increase in interest in hearing, particularly from television broadcasters, because people are home too, and they were wanting to get the news and get the information and hear from their leaders via that medium, but they didn't want the commentary.